Welcome everyone. This is Ankur Joshi. I'm the founder and CEO of Nuclei, which is a fintech startup working with banks across Asia. Uh, I'm extremely grateful to have Deena, who is a dear friend, on this podcast with us today. And Deena is an amazing leader, uh, uh, a better human being, if I may. And I have had the pleasure of working with her in the past, and it's been great to call her my friend. And I'm very, very happy to have her on this podcast for this conversation. I have learned a lot from her, and I'm sure today also there will be a few things which I'll pick up from her, and I'm sure all the listeners of this podcast would also enjoy this conversation. Deena, welcome to this podcast.
Thank you so much, Ankur, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So, Deena, we were speaking right before we started recording that this conversation is more about you as an individual, how you have grown into the leader that you are, the choices you made along the whole, along the journey, more about your learnings, less about your successes, because most people, your successes are very, very visible, right? But your points of learning, your points of struggles, which essentially make you the leader and make you the person that you are which are more important, should be spoken more about, right? So we'll go back to your childhood. We want to know exactly what were the few events which shaped your personality while during your growth years. So if you can shed some light on that, that will be awesome.
Sure, Ankur, great. I think for thank you for all those kind words, and definitely, I've been extremely fortunate to cross paths with people like you, amazing leaders, and I know that this is a learning process, and every day, every person who comes across, and this goes way back to when you asked me about the childhood, that still remains as everyone's the sweetest and the golden years I can think of, carefree, with so many people guiding you, so many people telling you what to do and what to become, what to be, and all those dreams that you have in your head. And that's an amazing time to recall. So I hail from way remote place down south in the state of Kerala, which is God's own country. So I would say that that was the first fortune I ever had in terms of having in a lovely environment to grow up in. You look around, it's all lush green, and it's a village setting the way you call it today, but that's something which I miss so much being in talking to you from Bangalore, and with all the buildings that I see around. Of course there's a charm to it, and this is a city I have spent my half my life, but half the life I've spent in the place called Malapalli, which is in down south in Kerala, and defined by houses being in very large plot of land wherein you have multiple trees, right from, we are in the mango season, so I can even clearly remember how many mangoes we had all around our house, which was probably, and I could really figure out 4 o'clock, 4 a.m. in the morning, if I ever woke up, that was during my summer holidays when I had a mango right next to someone else's house, but in our place. And we had to go early morning before the kids come, otherwise we wouldn't get the mangoes. So if they wake up at 5 o'clock, we have to ensure the next day we wake up at 4:30 if we have to get the mangoes. So starting from right there, so that has been the kind of childhood and the setting I had, which also meant I had the opportunity to go to a convent school. Those were the days where you will go to convent schools and girls' schools or a boys' school, kind of. And that's where I started off. And the good part is that I was born to a teacher parents. My father was a English professor, literature professor, and my mother was a botany teacher, botany professor, and both of them in the college very close to our place. So it is like the academics background that we had. And my dad was also the principal of a college. He was an amazing orator. He had like a multifaceted personality, very well known in the area. And the good part was that that also meant we came in touch with a lot of people, because I remember growing up when people used to come home to meet him to discuss different things. So right from, he had a variety of interests, right from social service to literature to art to, he was an amazing artist also. And then people used to come to him for all the things like, writing speeches. So they were like a multitude of different kind of people who used to come to him. And then more importantly, I've also seen how empathetic and how he wanted to stand for a social cause. So he has been my first person, I would say, that who was extremely influential in the way I was growing up and how my life shaped up. And my mother, who was again, who held everything at home together, ensured that we all have grew up as a extremely disciplined kids. Whereas my dad was like, you have whatever freedom in your life, think freely, act freely, follow your heart. And my mom was like, be grounded. You should have some discipline in life. So instead of, though I was like personality wise more like my dad, she ensured that I have a balance of both. And that was growing up, and I had an older brother. So this is why I'm talking about all the families, like this is where my first form of value system got framed. And that's where, the picking up different interest levels, in interest in different things. I remember during summer holidays how my dad used to make us do sculpture. So we used to go ant hills, we used to go and take it, grind it, and then mix it with water. And we used to have the entire clay modeling sessions, fonting sessions. There are various interesting stuff which we call about summer classes, or some, I mean, summer camps. Today we had those camps, all our friends around used to come over. And so that's how the life started, and which is where imbibing from what you have, from the people around you, from the environment around you, because those are the, in a village setting when you grew up, not only that you understand the seasons, not only that you understand how the changes happen around you and you connect it with your life, but you also know each person's life very well. I mean, across. It's not like in the lap of luxury. You have everything, right? From people who are suffering, people who have short-term problems, people who have like long-term suffering, long-term problems, and how do you come together to sort out for that. And one thing that my dad always I observed and learned is that my dad stepped in wherever it was required, took extreme responsibility, and I've seen him solving it. And that was the first learning, which is where whenever things got tough, I always used to have like, yeah, this is the time I need to take charge. And this is the time I need to execute, irrespective of whether something will come to you or not. But take somebody else's problem as your own problem. And later, I had gone through in my childhood also, I had gone through a lot of issues in terms of this towering personality who has been my dad, whom I used to look up to, had a lot of health struggles, right? From heart, bypass surgery when I was as young as a 4.5-year-old kid, seeing him go through multiple heart attacks, to seeing him getting paralyzed when I was just 8. And, one early morning on a June 1st, I wake up to see him just making some sort of strange voices. And I later realized as a kid that he got paralyzed and he would have a long road to recovery. So the next thing he taught me is like never to give up in life. Despite all of this, he was the principal of a college. He didn't give up his responsibility. He came back. He had the willpower and determination to come back, and he had the willpower and determination to continue with it. So this was his second, again, mentioning that never buckle down, never give up. And that's where in the moment you lose that strength of your mind and your determination is when everything can come crashing down. And there are a lot of people, including us as kids, the family, there are other people around who would have really gone crashing down if that one person decides, maybe I don't want to fight. So that's where, it's not for you alone, but for you and many others, because you have a purpose to fulfill. So he always had that purpose driven part of it. Whereas my mother, when we used to grow up, always used to have that competitive mindset. When he was more like think freely, act with your heart, my mom was like, yes, you need to have certain goals and bare minimum achieve that. So that was a good combination which shaped me. But in terms of the value system and that I picked up, then when we went into around 8th standard, I just decided I want to experience co-ed and have to go to it. There was a school which I used to fancy, and I said, this is a ICC from a state syllabus. I just wanted to go and study there. So it was just impossible. Everybody was like, eighth, when you have these kind of state syllabus and what you're running and what you want to achieve as a goal, why do you want to have the entire rough thing? Because in the 10th standard, if you're continuing here, you have a good chance of becoming a rank holder. Maybe you can give in the first 5, first 3, whatever. Why do you want to just rock the boat right now? 2 more years and it's a different syllabus. How will you catch up, cope up? But I think that by then I was extremely determined that I have to explore the world more, because there is a world beyond my village that I have seen. Because whenever we go to the next town, this is where I have watched it from the vehicle that I travel. The playground, it used to look very different from where we are, and kids used to look very different. The way they interact used to look very different. That's where my first dream formed of, I want to study in this school. And I still remember I was a rank holder expectation in my current school. I go there anyway, because I was so insistent. My dad's friend was teaching there. He spoke to him. We went there. And finally, the principal, when we went, he asked me to write a test. I said, definitely I can. And that's the time when we had a science in my state syllabus. And there they have been from fifth standard. This is eighth standard I'm talking about. And fifth standard, they have been talking about whether you need to be going by, physics, chemistry, biology, and H2O and all that. And I have never heard of it. And I went, okay, I'll write the exam. So I wrote the exam. The first thing that the principal said, yeah, it looked like it's okay. Maybe we can consider, but just in case you're not able to cope, this is the second semester of second term of eighth standard. If you're not able to cope, would you be okay to sit in eighth standard once more? So this is like throughout a rank holder, throughout first rank and nothing less. And somebody is asking me, would you be able to repeat eighth? And immediately came the answer, because I was so driven by the purpose that I wanted to. Yeah, I will. My mom was like shocked. How will I tell people that you have failed in eighth? What is the outcome? So that's how we started off in eighth standard. Royally, in the first exam, I flunked in every subject I could. I wrote the exam in. And then I was questioning myself, was it a wise choice? I have 2 more years to do my 10th. And so this is where finally I still remember this was my first success or failure, I must say. Eighth standard results were published and you could only see the names. They don't tell you what rank or anything. And that was a day, till date, the most tense day I have ever had in my life. And when I'm going there, I'm like literally my legs are not moving. I really don't know whether I'll actually be making it to the ninth standard. And this was like more than my 10th standard results. I was extremely tensed in eight because I had this feeling maybe I'll have to repeat. I don't know. Thankfully, I got through, and that was one of my biggest success. And that school also made a lot of difference in my life, because that choice made a lot of difference in my life in terms of understanding what are the possibilities out there. Because this is a place where people started thinking, or rather, every other person is thinking about how do I go and study in a Ivy League later in my career. I mean, the goals were very very different compared to where I'm coming from, where majority of whom you are speaking to might be like probably after this doing a home science and doing this and just getting married and settled, compared to ambitions flying high. So this made a lot of difference in terms of the perspective itself. And that's how the entire studies shaped up. Then when I went to 11th and 12th, I was very clear, oh my God, science I love. At heart, I love science. And I did my 11th and 12th also in science itself. But one thing I realized is I don't want to go for, I mean, coming from that setting, everybody was going either into engineering or medicine. The first question was like, am I cut out for that? I love science, I love math, but I was never extremely good at, programming or the language, so to speak, all the syntax. I used to get it royally all over the place. So I'm like, I'm not cut out to become, because if I become an engineer, those are the days when you definitely will be going into the computer stream. And that's the career I've seen. And then the question was like, do you really want to do that? So I was like, no, I might not be. And that's where, I looked at medicine again was another stream I could. And then I realized from my first day in my practical session, wherein I was so worried about the frog's heart, which is under chloroform, heart pounding. I'm like, ma'am, don't do it now. And the entire 64 people are standing and looking at it. And I was like so concerned about the heart pumping. It's not dead yet, so you shouldn't be dissecting. And the teacher looking at me and asking, oh, fine. So if the patient is on the table, you will wait for the patient's heart to come down. That's when I realized, okay, I don't have the aptitude for this neither. I should rethink my choices. So that has led to actually the choice. What I wanted at heart is I always wanted to become a journalist. I had this thing of, I've seen so many issues, as I mentioned, as a child, I've seen so many issues being picked up, or so many things being, solved through collective responsibility by people. That's why journalism was very close to heart. And the first thing I discussed at home, and somehow they were very apprehensive. Why don't you just go for a professional course and then come back? And that's when, when we had a career session, there was a chartered accountant, an engineer, and a doctor who came for a career session in my 12th. And CA was like absolutely brilliant profession, and he started talking about how things. I had no clue what the CA was. And then listening to him, I'm like, yeah, good respectable profession. It looks like 4 years you'll be done. And he's so happy. Doctor says there are only 23 medicines, 23 diseases, which actually has a cure, and everything else is still symptomatic treatment. Sometimes it can lead to frustration. I'm like, do I really want to do that? And connecting that back to my frog history, I don't think I'm cut out for this. And engineer was like, okay, engineering, I know that in the current scenario, I might end up being a computer engineer, which I don't have the aptitude for. So the choice was like, okay, CA, stuck in my head. That's how I went into the CA as a stream, and later just to realize, I mean, I was very passionate about one thing. I realized is I always loved business, and the whole idea of how things are created, how opportunities are spotted, how the trade happens, how you make things out of it. Because math always used to be extremely close to my heart, math, economics, those combinations. So that's how CA somehow, as a curriculum, I really enjoyed, and then had the opportunity of interacting with multiple businessmen, businesses. I still remember I had an amazing principal during my CA days where I did my articleship with. And he used to encourage us to go and, while we were even if we are auditing the books of accounts of a very local small business, right, SME, he used to encourage us to go to the brokers, get the best of the best balance sheets to look at, including the info, look at the presentation, look at the notes, and have set that ambition as such in terms of how do you present it to the best of the best. That's where again I learned whatever you do, you should have a signature on your own. Like your signature should be somewhere in terms of, don't consider whether it's small or big, but give your all to it in terms of, is it the best? Somebody who says like, this is coming from so and so source kind of. So that's something which he taught, and I didn't have to refer to an info balance sheet for me to draw up tire traders accounts back in a small town. But the whole perspective of going, figuring that out, applying it here, and that's where ground up things started happening. So this is where even during my academics and the teachers and the curriculum, even the second school, that's where I mentioned about shaping up how differently from a practical curriculum shaped you. So these are some of the touch points or some of the areas which, in short, you shape up, or rather, you really form your dreams and start firming up what you really want to become. And that's where all of these dreams put together is where, when I finished my CA, again, all in there, I was very clear I wanted to do it in the first attempt. And that's a benchmark I kept. I never wanted to have a rank, but at least, first attempt, because I can't go through it again. I have this problem of, as a personality, when I look at myself, I have this problem of boredom. And boredom, if I get bored with something, I can never go back and look at it. So I wanted to ensure I don't have to open these books again. So that's where again, ensured by 21, I'm a chartered accountant, done. And the next step was to go to maybe whatever I want to, my heart looks like, wants to do. But the thing is, like, by then I had a fair understanding of my personality, what my
Mhm.
likes and dislikes are, because
Mhm.
I knew that by then I couldn't be an auditor by profession. Only thing is, same thing, the repetition. Because if I see 2 years, if I do the audit 2 years in a row for the same company, third year is extremely difficult for me, because it's the same thing. Because first year is such a thrilling experience, because you get to learn how the business functions, how the processes are, how does it happen. But second year, there will be something new to learn. But by third year, you know exactly how things are. And the same numbers, it's just a growth that you see. So this is where I realized maybe, this is not something which I really want to do in life. But I wanted one thing, whether I can, that's how I started my career. I started with Deloitte because I did my articleship in a very small firm. Now I wanted to see how it will be, how different it is from a big firm, for example.
Okay. So
So that's how I started.
before we go into your
Yeah,
when you joined Deloitte and the story after that, right? Like a couple of things to double click on. One of the things which a lot of times, as I was mentioning earlier, that people only look at the positives of life,
right.
right? Your father having gone through quite a few health scares, right, and having the willpower to get over that and still continue doing what he was doing. Um, it's a testament to his personality. But you having to go through that also while you are very young also builds a different kind of personality or brings a different kind of a flavor to your own personality at that age, right? And I think that's something which is most like, a lot of time, like, I am also hearing about this for the first time, right? So that's something which is not generally, and it's not something which any individual discusses openly, but it has a significant impact on the way you think of responsibility taking, right? It has a significant impact on the way you take up responsibility, not just for yourself, but also for the family, and as you grow in life, also for the team which is working for you, etc., etc. So I think that definitely requires mentioning. The second interesting thing, and this is something which I've seen with 7 or 8 more people in the last 5, 6 months. There are two different kinds of people during those years, right? Eighth, ninth, 10th, or maybe seventh as well, where either kids start failing in a lot of subjects and that failure becomes a normal thing, right? So they stop even trying because the assumption is that I am anyways going to fail. But over the last few months, I've come across a few people who have failed once, right, during those years. And they have all of them have gone back and mentioned that particular failure. And in general, that has been in math, right? That was the point when I said enough, and now I will create a differentiation with the rest of the class and go on a different path, right? And I think that particular failure, because it has been so pivotal in terms of, and it's very, very interesting, right? Like we are talking about an 11, 12, 13-year-old kid, right? And a failure at that age, even for people who are nearing 50, they still remember that failure and consider that to be one of their turning points. It's very, very, very interesting to think about, right? Like a single event can have an impact for the next 30, 40 rest of the life. So I'm sure that was the same case with you as well.
Exactly.
Awesome, awesome. Sorry. So, having completed your CA at 21, which is again no mean feat, come on, you joined Deloitte. How, like, what was the thought process in your mind in terms of what you wanted to achieve in life, right? And you're blessed to have a family which was giving you that opportunity. And by the way, I also want to take a pause here and discuss this thing. Having been in the industry, uh, for a woman leader, it's not just about talent, right? Because you have so many women who are talented. It's also about the opportunity and
Right.
fairness in the opportunity which is granted, right? You are literally maybe one of those few women leaders who have, been very, very successful. But I'm also sure that there have been times where you would have felt that the society is not being fair to you, or people around you are not being fair to you. Now, it is very easy, and I've seen people in my family go through that, and it's very easy to get bogged down by that, right? So, what are the mental models, or how do you psychologically train yourself to ignore that and keep going? It's I think it is very, very important because as a man, I probably don't even understand half of it, right? And I've tried to uh, gain empathy. I've tried to hear a lot about it so that I will understand it. But I'm sure people who experience it, uh,
Right.
they obviously know a lot more, right? So as a man, I may not be able to even empathize completely with it. So how do you steel yourself? How do you build those frameworks to, go through those issues in life? And I'm sure, I am assuming that at some point of time you start ignoring them. And
Right. You're absolutely right. I think, as a child, when I mentioned about the growing up days itself, we would have figured out how very conventional environment I would have been living in. And that's where I feel the family shield was very important because I had a father who taught me to ignore what the society says, believe in yourself, and have shape up dreams. Don't say impossible for anything. Don't peg down your ambition. This is exactly what he used to tell me. Just have your ambitions up. And he never made me feel I'm a girl. even though the entire world and the entire place was, trying to. I still remember my brother was 5 years older to me, and he had a BSA a blue cycle at that time. He was very, very passionate about. And then, I used to ask him, can I just push it for some time? He will say no. And seeing this twice, what my dad did was, I was in fourth standard. He got me a cycle. He said, you don't have to wait for anybody's mercy. If you want something, you get it for yourself. And then I learned how to cycle. And then that was a joyous moment wherein I could actually ride a two-wheeler cycle in my fourth standard. I still remember going on the road, and then people around used to be like, which girl would ride a cycle right now? I was the first in that area, and people used to have criticism around, not even like, appreciating. And that was the first discrimination. When I come back and realize, your cycle, you can ride, go on the road. Who's there to ask you, right? So these are the subtle things which we need to actually give. That gives a lot of power. My father is telling, I can do it, this is mine. Why would I care about anybody else, right? So that's the place where first we need to give that kind of confidence to people. I always keep telling that if you, two times, three times you say you can't do it, or you shouldn't be doing it, or you shouldn't be dreaming, people will go into that level. And then, this is where somebody was there to propel, and I would give it all to that age wherein when somebody is putting you down and somebody is telling go back and fight it out and stand for yourself. And that was a first important thing. Later, whatever people say, I had that whole shield of, this is what I think is right. But if there is a point, if I'm hurting somebody, or if I'm like crossing the line for something from a complete limit, it's not the moral values which is society instill in you. But if I'm hurting somebody, or which is like completely unacceptable from all the value system that you have, it is different. But nobody else has the right to tell you that because you are a girl, because this is a gender, because you come from a certain economic background, because you come from whatever be the bias that we have, right? Ethnicity, whatever, you can't. So the moment you do that, it is about, it's about always have this thing processed in your mind that this is to pull you down. Do you really want to listen to that? Or do you want to filter it out? Believe in yourself, form and shape your own thought process, your own dreams, and push forward. And that's a mental model I have always gone by. And that's why when people ask me about discrimination, I'm like, is it really because of the gender, or is it really because people are like that? You have two choices. You deal in your own way with such kind of people, or if there is a choice not to have real interactions with them over like a prolonged period of time. It's a choice that you have, because who pulls down, and and what I have always felt is, I keep telling this, if you make sense, I haven't seen a single person discounting you, irrespective of whatever. So that is another thing. You should make sense, and you should ensure that there is absolutely no disruption for whatever. Because, for example, as a woman, there are two things that society imposes upon you. One is where they have certain set of rules that you should be doing this, you shouldn't be doing this. This is a way you're supposed to behave. This is a way you're not supposed to behave, and this is the role that you have to play. So this is by the society, and you have all the right to question all of that. The other side of it is something as a signal we give to the society, which is derived from the first answer, which is where most of the time we get into problem. Because, for example, when it is like, I am a woman, I cannot travel beyond this, I'm scared. I am a woman, I cannot do XYZ things because of XYZ reasons. I'm a woman. At 5 o'clock, I need to log out because I have so many things in the family. I mean, why can't anybody else take care of the remaining of the stuff? Who told you just because you're a woman you need to do all of this? So this is derived problems which women also are so tuned to, and they are like falling a prey to it, which makes, again, it makes a little complex for the entire society in terms of getting that more norm. And then can you trust the person completely or not, or what will be the output or reaction to a particular situation? So that being said, I had the case of I had my daughter at a very very late stage. She's just 4, and I was raising series B for the current company when I went into labor. I still remember a morning, when I got the news, the next day I have to go for a C-section. Night 1 o'clock, 1:30, I'm like settling up emails because I don't know how many days of outage I would have. And we barely have 1.5% in the whole finance setup at that point in time. We're closing one transaction, getting into the next transaction. Whom do I actually give and go? So the issue is that if I'm like, at that point say that, no, I still need my 6 month, and I still need my 3-4 weeks of out time, what will happen to the company? How will you push forward? So this is some of the situations you definitely have to like really see how things have to shape up. So these are the ways, this is some of the areas where the call of responsibility, sometimes you completely crash, you don't know what to do. But that's where the call of duty was more like at 1:30 or 2 in the night. How do I actually ensure it's all in safe hands? Somebody has a full responsibility of, even if it is a prolonged thing, say 2 week, 3 week, because you never know who all has to be appraised of what, who all has to be mentioned about. So that mental model in terms of that is a time when responsibility takes over you. And this is something, if you function in certain of this mode, which is what I value so much in the colleagues and great leaders I've seen working around me also, and being in a startup for the last 12 years also means seen a lot of people of this DNA wherein that whole determination of come what may, nobody will must know my situation behind, but they will see what my output is, and they function like that. They're real hustlers, get it done. So if you have that, none of these norms are impacting you, and you have a purpose driven way of closing things, I don't think gender will become a problem. I think we have to cut out from the entire root of how the society looks at it, all the way to how we look at other people, because don't generalize. There are people who come out of it. Recently, I was talking to somebody who again mentioned, 9 years, and daughter is 9, and she never could. This is a time when she had a career break after 9 years. She took a conscious break of 3 months to spend time with her daughter, and this is the first time she ever looked at her day, how her day looks like. So there's so many people, and she was also explaining about how on the 16th day she was back at work, and when she had her daughter. So there are people like that. Whereas we keep talking about, oh, but during the interview process itself, keep screening. Oh, married recently, and this first kid, okay, this age. So I've seen people do that too. And that's something which everywhere 360-degree things have to change, because don't generalize, and this can happen to anyone. For example, it could even be a person who just goes out and meets with an accident, 3 week downtime. It is absolutely not gender, but this is all like continuity, how you look at it. And look at the trait of everybody. You don't generalize. I mean, with multiple things, you will be in a position to still steer ahead. So these are some of the things which I always feel it's a collective responsibility, not only of the society. Yes, we need to stand for the elements of change, like we each one of us will have to be that, because there's a whole lot of change to be brought in, and that cannot happen overnight. And the second, the people who are on the receiving side also should be more responsible, that next one more person will not be judged on each of their response to a situation or a reaction. So it's a balance that both sides have to be. We cannot sit aside, keep cribbing, oh, this is how people are. But you look at, what has been their experience too. So which is where, it's exactly like the NPS. You really need to figure out how the other side feels. Not only that I have a great product, I have a great product. How does the other side feel?
But you're absolutely right about one thing, that you are an average of people who you surround yourself with, right? So if there are bad actors, it is very, very important to remove those bad actors, right? And women in general, like even if you look at just evolution, women in general are better at nurturing, better at growing a particular thing, right? Better, probably way more diligent than men in general, generally speaking, right? Way more diligent as well, right? And the whole concept of taking responsibility comes naturally to them. It's not nurture. Men have to nurture that whole sense of responsibility taking. But for women, the whole concept of responsibility comes naturally to them. So, and I think as a society, globally, not just in India, as a society, I think we have not done well at capturing or nurturing that talent pool throughout, more so in India, because like most of our working class women are sitting at home, right? They are like, and I'm not at all saying that taking care of home or is not something which is not a big responsibility, but we can also agree that a lot of women have to stay back at home not by choice, but are told to stay at home, right? So I think that's a lot of national resource which is being wasted, right? And a talent pool which takes responsibility naturally, which is being wasted. Like currently, we have a person in our team who went on a maternity break. And I think 6 weeks into her maternity break, I had to tell her that if I see you on Slack again, I'm going to ban you from Slack. She just couldn't stay away. Like any issue, she's there. Any issue, she's there. And she's like, "करूँ क्या? घर पे कुछ है नहीं करने का." I'm like, "नहीं, it doesn't matter. Stay at home. If at all we need you, we will call you, but you don't come." But I mean, obviously, she didn't listen to me. But yeah, I mean, there are so many great women leaders, and it's unfortunate that we have to even discuss this, bifurcate on the basis of gender. But I think it is important that we speak about it. It
Yeah.
is important that we bring it out and speak openly about it so that more people uh, understand this and are able to remove their whole judgmental mask and views. More men, women obviously know it, but
Correct.
men need to understand and remove that. Uh,
I've seen both men and women. That's the interesting part of it, who discriminates. And maybe me as a manager would be more discriminative. All that I spoke about, right, including me and others, and the kind of empathy we have for others. So even environmentally also, right. So for example, after my pregnancy in the new offices, we have entire mother's room, feeding room, all the things attached to it, and then we have a children's room right now, because we understood how difficult it is in most of the places. We just see it as low, but actually, do we have an environment which is friendly for them to come back when you expect them to come back? And the same thing happens at home also. Can I take some role, or at least this only lasts for 3 to 4 years when they need so much of support? Can we even outdo the support system so that they don't have to stay away from work and nothing is getting missed in the whole mix? So
Correct.
that's how I think, it's a 360-degree change that we need from everywhere, from the employer side, from the colleague side, from we who screen, to people at back home, to even the acceptance of support systems. And that's inevitable, because I've gone through real struggle in the last 4 years, and I really can understand totally. Sometimes that whole mom guilt, sometimes that whole thing of you not being there for multiple things, and are they missing out on things? A lot of things come with it, and it's not easy. And without that one support system or one encouragement, how difficult it is. So it is a 360-degree, and it is a serious issue as well.
No, no,
And I
this is
feel,
something
when the
which
statistics, it's a dwindling statistics now, which is concerning. I mean, women being in the workforce, which is very concerning.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something which I think our company can learn a lot from you as well. So I'll reach out to you separately to this about this, right? Now let's come back to you joining Deloitte and getting this whole interest in business and understanding how businesses are run, right? What at that point of time when you were maybe 21, 22, 23, was running your own company something which you had dreamt about, or did it happen as you grew? Like, how did that concept even come about?
See, honestly speaking, I didn't have a clue when I started my career what I wanted to do in life, because my ambition or my head wasn't shaped up in such a manner that I was still in the figuring out mode. What do I like? Because only thing I knew by the end of CA was that I don't like audit. I don't want to be a practicing chartered accountant. But what I wanted to be, I didn't know. The first career move was mainly because I was very curious when we always had this discrimination of Big Four. Whenever you go for interviews, Big Four and not from Big Four articleship. So I was very curious about what happens in Big Four that doesn't happen in the small firm, right? So that's a curiosity which propelled me to Deloitte again, which is like my 8th standard perseverance. I went and met a partner, and that was the only one Big Four presence in Kerala at that point in time. Until then, I was not in a position to think of going out of Kerala. When I met him, and I still remember him mentioning me, it's very difficult for you to work in a big four after coming from this. There's a lot of whole lot of processes and everything different. I said that's exactly the challenge I want to. You won't get paid as much as others. I have to test it out and consider you almost like me. I said I don't have a problem. I'm up for it because I'm just starting my career. So that's how I started off with Deloitte, and within a few months I started doing, like within 2 to 3 months I started doing the best of the best audits they had in the firm. And then I realized, okay, fine, there is discipline, there is a method to madness, there are multiple things which I could learn from there. And things were different at different scale. I mean, companies like large banks, send a statutory audit, a large manufacturing companies, pan-India audits, and foreign companies, Indian subsidiaries. So there was like a whole lot of different exposure that awaited me, and which also meant travel, like crazy travels, crazy places. You have no clue where you're going to. And one thing is, like, I never said no. I was like absolutely scared within, well deep within. Like, how do I go to a new place? I've never traveled like this. How do I do? But nothing came. None of those expressions, none of those things came out. And I'm like, I'm going to do this. And all this struggle was within. And I keep convincing myself, I'm doing this. I will do it. I'll give it all. And then that paid off. And afterwards, I was very clear. When I took it up only, I mentioned to the partner as well, maybe next one couple of years is what I want to do audit, and after that I'll pursue something in industry. So I would say that initial 3 to 4 years of my career has been a exploratory year for me, because I was still searching for that one thing that would make me happy. What is it at my strength? Because I knew that a desk job, repetitive work, these are the things I don't want to do. But I was still discovering what is it that I want to do, because I didn't have sufficient exposure to what are the options out there, which is how I came to Bangalore next. After Deloitte in Kerala, I decided I'll come to Bangalore, and I took up a job in banking. And this is where a very interesting part of it also was that this was Kotak when it was still a finance limited, and I was fortunate to be part of it when the whole transition to bank was happening, and it was a very interesting time. This was 2003, and it was a very, very interesting time in terms of the whole transition, talking to RBI in terms of the clearinghouse membership, sub membership, and there were like whole lot of, and identifying where the branches should be. It has been a very different exposure altogether. So from there, I realized, I love 2 3 aspects which were very, very becoming very evident. Was like, I love problem solving, I love interacting with people, and in the process I love learning new things. And it's not about sitting and reading or something which just comes your way, read and understand. It is more about relating, understanding. And particularly the trigger was problem solving, and when I see something solved, I used to be like so amazed with, wow, this is so nice to see. Need I didn't have to be given any kind of incentive, nothing at all. All I have to say is like, this problem is solved and I'm so energized by it, right? I don't care about anything else. So that's where it was a new thing of, how to, problem solving was something which I figured out. And even then, the repetitive work was way, way strictly no for me. And that's where I tried credit, marketing, operations, multiple, had the opportunity to go through different parts in the banking. And I still remember getting a call from, this was a turning point wherein I happened to be in the very initial stages of one of the startups, so to speak, and which was a investment research company set up passionately by four founders, Anand, Mohan, Brad, and Andrew, all from large banks and very large, global companies, right from, Anand was one who was instrumental in setting up Goldman Sachs in India those days, with a JV very early on in the early 2000s. And all of them, very seasoned bankers, came up with a passion to actually solve for their investment research. And they used to handpick, give us a 5 week complete training. It was very different experience. And that's when I realized the power of, seeing end to end. Earlier, the organizations were very large, and you would be doing something which has got a small impact. And that's where I would say the joy of startup came in, like in terms of building companies, building things right in front of your eyes and implementing things. So from that very early stage all the way to an amazing set of colleagues and amazing set of people that I had the opportunity to work with. And this changed a whole lot of things in me. And that's where right after I also took an entrepreneurial plunge, wherein I was also running a shop and dine concept. And I can see that that first 8 years of my career, with all the experiments I've done and the people I've worked with and the experiences I had, did shape up what I wanted to do in life. I think that time onwards, I was very clear. I had a very bad failure doing my first venture, and which ensured that I had to be, at least for some more time, be working if I were to stand on my own 2 feet. And then the choice was like, I just couldn't go back to large organizations again. Yes, of course I did a short stint with EY in between, but after that it was dawned on me that I'm not cut out for a large organization, startup or something on your own. So these were the two choices, and that's how the next 5 to 6 years defined being in startups. Because definitely I had debts to pay off. Let me be very honest about it. But I couldn't go back even for a living. Go back to back to a large organization. And these were the things which shaped up the rest of my journey actually. And two things again in the startups, good opportunity I had was, it was almost like every founder that I worked with has been an amazing, exceptionally good people at heart, extremely good value systems that they held. And the reason for them to do business was the joy of doing it, the passion for solving a problem. And that's where, standing along, building along with them has been a pleasure, and who always had a human touch. So these are the key aspects I always looked in the teams I wanted to work with, and none of those choices were bad. And sometimes, the journey was tough, journey has been bad, but sometimes it could get up and down, and that's where how the startups are. But during that time, that's where nonetheless, it was almost like a pact. Nonetheless, we will stay together, what, no matter what, whether it is up or down or whatever. You don't care about what are the benefits, what are the things that you lose. You don't get to a point wherein you panic. It's all about, yes, we are in it together, and we are going to build it together. And that has been the another aspect which really helped me come on to the journey of open as well, which is the currently, the last 6 years of my journey. So the 6 years have been part of three amazing startups, and then coming into open on the entrepreneurial journey. So I would say it has been a collection of experiences and struggles which shaped me, propelled me, finally helped me even identify what I really want to be in life,
Mhm.
right? I wouldn't say that you used a lot of were very kind to tell me I've had success, I've been successful. But the whole thing that I don't know is, how do you measure success? To me, it success is an everyday, every minute thing wherein when you feel extremely elated about some outcome, it could be as small as getting a candy for something which you have done, but that is success to me, right? Not with, not the perception that the world has, but are you content deep within, telling that, wow, I did it, we did it, and the team around you, the people around you, and you making a difference to their life. And that is all about success. It's all about how content they are. And in the world's eyes, it could be a disaster, but sometimes it could be a success for you. And that's what the yardstick differs, and it's about
So,
not relative but absolutely to you.
has this definition of success, and I mean, you have defined it very, very brilliantly that it is being content when you feel successful, right? But has this definition of success changed over a period of time, over the last 20 odd
that
years?
that is something which always remained the same, because if
Yeah.
you change this definition, which is a fundamental part of it, this is where you tend to get into rat race, you tend to get into opportunistic deliveries. And I wouldn't say that sometimes if you don't change like that, you might have setbacks also. But it's a choice one has to make. What makes you happy? Do you
Mhm.
want to really get into that part of it? Or do you want to really think the macro big picture, the stay put on the goal, like have a sight on the real goal you have defined? And that, I think, if you, the moment you define that, whether it's far, near, wherever, like that, fundamentals of exactly where you want to reach and the fundamentals of it, because there are multiple ways in which you can reach there. And I don't think that changes, because the moment, the thing that gives you happiness, a joy, gets formed as a personality, gets formed much earlier. And very rarely people completely change. And this has a fundamental shift has to happen in your personality for your success measure or this yardstick to change actually. And sometimes you see that people who are competitive are always driven being competitive, and there's nothing wrong in it, right?
Mhm.
And sometimes people are like happiness driven by happiness, sometimes value system driven by value system. They can go to any extent. And I love people who stand for that extreme, like passion for something. I mean, something you stand for that defines your personality. So most of the time it's important you stay true to it and don't change because of the situation, because of the environment, because people want to change. And that's where when you talk about overcome your weakness, I would always say strengthen your strengths. Some of the weaknesses you might not be able to overcome ever in your life. And if you don't love networking, don't don't mention that maybe bare minimum what you require you go and do, but don't tomorrow say that, oh, I'll run around in network. If you love talking to people and networking, please go ahead. If even if somebody says at your level you shouldn't be doing so much of, please go ahead and still do it, because that's what makes you happy. So I think somewhere those are the collection of your strengths, and the collection of your value system is what makes you, and the set of experiences in people, like you observe, you generally see what matters to you more,
Mhm.
you observe what matters to you more, and then you start imbibing and having learnings from that, whether to say no or even to say yes. Sometimes when you see some people, you might also say, I never want to be in such a situation, react like that, and sometimes you say, I wish I ever could be like that, why, what is it? And then you process what has been the change, way in which you think, what is the delta that you can actually align to one or the other, how many times. And this is very important, like being self-aware and being having the boundaries and the fundamentals laid for at every situation. That's going to be very, very key in terms of how you define yourself, even your happiness. And your happiness is the definition for the happiness of your people around you. Yeah.
That's profound. That's profound. Stira, thank you so much. It's been an amazing conversation. I've learned quite a few new things about you, and a couple of things which I will definitely implement and borrow from you. Before we end this podcast, one last question. What is the kindest thing that anyone has ever done for you?
Oh, that's a very tough question, I must say, because I think generally people have been very, very kind to me, very, very kind, and the world has been kind to me. I have no reason to complain. But as I'll show you something. See, I have something here. It's a set
Uh,
of donut today. And do you know, when I got this, I was asking, from where did I miss any of the celebration date of any of my closest ones? And then I get to hear from my co-founder Mabel. She's one of the amazing person, an amazing person I've seen in terms of thinking about people. And there I can't slip mentioning my wonderful three co-founders. Kindest thing, she just sent me this telling her there are some people who just work so hard and yet take a lot of flack from people, and this is just a sweet thing for you, a hug, tight hugs from me. There was no reason, and I'm like, wow, why don't I think of, I can never be like that, I can never think of people, I might think in my head, but I might not act like that. So it was
correct,
a
correct.
small little bit of kindness, she didn't have to do it, there was absolutely no reason, no reason. And out of the blue, when you get something like that, it's a very kind thing, I would say. I still remember when I was pregnant, when I knew I was pregnant, I went and told my co-founders, this was in the journey. I knew that, you can't afford to have anybody slacking at that time. And I was panicking, thinking, oh my God, how will the journey be if something goes? I went and told them, all tension, I will tell you something, this is what it is. And I still remember the laughter that Anish had. And I was like, I'm telling him, if you think that I can't go through this journey with you, I really don't know what to do. I'll be very happy if anything is randomly happening. Be rest assured, we should actually be, I'm happy. He laughed and it's such a joyous thing. Why are you ever feeling like this? We are all feeling somebody is coming into our family, and he's like, you just focus on what you have to, on your health and on your journey. And I thought it was the kindest. I mean, usually this is where every founder before also, I've always found that they are not like completely on the rat race, wherein they are not mentally looking at it. That immediate reaction was like mentally looking at whether she'll be there, what will I get it from, or whatever, right? I mean, all of them made me feel like such a joyous thing. This is our family thing. Why are you even feeling like that? That was very kind. And there are, like, I can tell you umpteen situations when I recall so many people who have been who have been very, very kind in terms of situations where they could have reacted much, much differently.
Yeah,
Or maybe, they could have made you feel very differently. And
absolutely,
those are the
absolutely.
things which I really, really appreciate in people. That's where I say, that's where I keep myself like believing to myself that though you come across people who might disrespect you, who might choose to treat you badly, who might have biases against you for whatever reason you can imagine of, you have a choice whether to align with them, or the world also has got equally good, a fantastic set of people. Do
Correct.
you want to actively find them and spend time with them? Because it's life is short, you want to spend time with them, or spend time mending them, or rather, thinking too much about overthinking about how do I fix them, or how do I fix this, or why did they choose to treat me like that, which you don't have control on. This part of happiness, like the pursuit of happiness, that interlude, that's with you. That's a choice we can always make and move on. And that's all about life at the end of the day, because some things you can't control, some things it's your choice that defines. And that's what life is all about. And whether you call it success or failure, it's all about the experiences, moments.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dia. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for having this conversation. Really appreciate it, and I absolutely enjoyed it.
Same here. You really set me on a real trip down the memory lane. Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate it, Ankur.
Glad to hear that. Thank you
Best
so much.
wishes to you. I'm
Take
sure
care.
you as a
Take care.
person, how you are taking it ahead, the full company. And so glad about all the people that are surrounded, I mean, who have the opportunity to be around you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, and wish you all the best, family, both personally at home as well as at open. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks, Uncle. You too.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye. Bye. Bye.